Ukrainian defense needs that are going on. Just got about 30 seconds. What are the conversations you are having among some of your peers or in Silicon Valley about what more you all can do? And again, just got about 30 seconds, just quickly if you could.
Yeah, it's really about funding. I mean, it's a little bit like when you have a baby. You know, in the first month, everybody shows up with food and offering to babysit, and everything's great. But here we are a year later, and now you're on your own, and you're out sleeping, and it's pretty rough. So just making sure that we keep getting the truth out there, like what you're doing together with me today, because Russia and Putin hate, are perfect at propaganda, and just try to keep the support up in terms of funding and attention on this terrible, atrocious war.
We wish you well. Please stay safe. Love the blue and yellow that you are wearing that we can see on YouTube and on our streaming service. Andy Kurtzik, be well, founder and CEO of Just Answer, right here on Bloomberg.
Get Bloomberg Business Week's new newsletter, BW Daily, delivered to your inbox every weekday. You'll get the Power of Business Week in a handy form. Sign up at Bloomberg.com/newsletters.
All right, just got some great insight on the war in Ukraine from Andy Kurtzik, founder and CEO of Just Answer. Well, we're going to stick with this one-year mark since that Russian war in Ukraine. We've got Angela Stent joining us. She understands this from so many different perspectives. She's coming up next.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
For the rest of this afternoon, breezy and turning colder with steady or falling temperatures. Tonight, mainly clear, down between 20 and 25 in the city, teens in the suburbs. For Saturday, partly to mostly cloudy skies and milder, up near 35, and then down to 30 at night. And then Sunday, partly sunny skies, temperatures up near 50. Chance of snow and rain mix coming up later on Monday. This is Gary Best with your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
The business world's most prominent voices join David Weston for Bloomberg Wall Street Week.
This week, former National Security Advisor Tom Donilon on what a year of war in Ukraine means for investors, Atlas Merchant Capital's Bob Diamond on the future of digital payments, and former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers on the surprise nominee for the World Bank president.
Bloomberg Wall Street Week with David Weston tonight at 6 on Bloomberg 1130, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
Bloomberg Invest returns to London on March 22nd, gathering leading financial thinkers in investing to identify the biggest risks and greatest opportunities facing economists, money managers, and influential investors in the region. From traditional investment tools to crypto to alternative assets, how should we put our money to work? Join to hear from executives from Blackstone, Quantum Light, and Sotheby's. Learn more about Bloomberg Invest, strategies for wealth creation at BloombergLive.com/investradio. Why do alternative investment managers rely on Pershing for personalized prime services? Lisa Lewin, a director of BNY Mellon's Pershing Prime Brokerage sales team, shares how we help you consider everything.
As the alternatives industry continues to evolve, Pershing wants to know, are you getting the service and support you need to overcome today's obstacles and challenges? Are you confident in the stability of your counterparty? Do you need help expanding your investor network? Do you have the latest allocator insights on investment strategies? Whether you're looking for customized financing, securities lending solutions, or capital introductions, Pershing is an award-winning prime broker committed to providing exceptional service and dedicated to meeting your needs, so you can focus on growing your business and producing results for your clients.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Credit card bills, large purchases, that home improvement project, it can all add up. Thankfully, Columbia Bank can help you consolidate and save with a home equity line of credit. Get the funds you need for anything you need. And the rate? Often lower than a credit card. Great rate, something you can always count on. Just like Columbia Bank. Apply quickly and easily online or in a branch. Count on Columbia. Subject to credit approval. Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash. It's 4:21 on Wall Street. We check markets all day long at Bloomberg. I'm Charlie Pellet. We begin with a developing story. Source tells Bloomberg Ron Gerber, a vocal Tesla shareholder, plans to withdraw a long-shot effort to run for a position on the company's board. That source says the company has agreed to meet with Gerber next week around Tesla's Investor Day on March 1st to discuss his concerns about the electric vehicle maker's governance. Today, we did have Tesla shares decline by 2.6%. This on a day when the rest of the market sold off. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all finished in the red. Indeed, a losing week for the S&P. On the week, the S&P was down 2.7%. That was the third weekly decline for the S&P. The Dow this week down for a fourth week, falling 3%. NASDAQ down 3.3%. Stocks declined after this morning's PCE report. We had the S&P down 42 points, lower by 1%. The Dow down 336, a drop there of 1%. NASDAQ down 195, a decline of 1.7%. 10-year yield 3.94%, with a 2-year at 4.80%. 2-year now at the highest since 2007. Spot gold down 0.6%, $18.11 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.5%, $76.55 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week, brought to you by Innovation Refunds. This is your daily reminder from Innovation Refunds. BRC is not alone. It's money your small to medium-sized business may be eligible to receive for keeping employees on payroll in 2020 and 2021. Just get an estimate of your company's potential refund. You can do that today. Learn more at getrefunds.com. Carol Master along with Maddie Mills, and as we said, this hour really focusing on that one-year mark since that Russian invasion and war with Ukraine. And we did hear from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying on this one-year mark of the Russian invasion that his country will secure victory if allies maintain their support, possibly this year. So we continue our look back at the year and what may come. Return, Maddie, to a trusted voice that we have leaned on a lot over the past 12 months since that invasion. Delighted to have back with us Angela Stent. She is Senior Advisor to the Center for Eurasian, Russian, and East European Studies, also served as National Intelligence Officer for Russia and Eurasia at the National Intelligence Council, and before that served at the U.S. Department of State. She's also written a book, Putin's World, Russia Against the West and with the Rest. This is why we have leaned on her so much. She's with us once again from Washington, D.C. Angela, thank you so much. I'm sure many people have been reaching out to you on this one-year mark, and so delighted that you could be with us again. 1 year in, what occupies your mind, your thoughts when it comes to this war and each day that it continues to drag on?
Well, thank you for having me back on the program. I would say that at the moment what I'm focused on is this new Russian offensive, which has already begun, the so-called spring offensive. It's going to be a very tough next 6 months. The Russians are still trying to take more territory. The Ukrainians are pushing them back. There's been very, very fierce fighting in a town called Bakhmut, where it's really like hand-to-hand combat, and there have been, large numbers of casualties. So I think we just have to watch that, and we have to see whether the Russians are more successful this time in this offensive than they've been in the past, and whether the Ukrainian army, with the equipment also from the NATO countries, can successfully push this Russian offensive back.
Hey, Angela, I wonder if you can talk about the China situation, because we're hearing mixed reports this week from them. CNN just issued a report that U.S. intelligence shows that the Chinese government is considering providing Russia with drones and ammunition. What is your take on what Beijing is going to do and their role in the war effort for Russia?
So last weekend I was at the Munich Security Conference. There were no Russian officials there, but the Chinese foreign minister was there. And he made it clear again that from the Chinese point of view, the West is partly responsible for this war. He said there was going to be a Chinese peace plan, which in fact they have issued today. But at the same conference, Secretary of State Tony Blinken gave an interview saying that the U.S. has information that China is considering supplying lethal weapons to Ukraine. The U.S. and other NATO countries have warned the Chinese that they shouldn't do this. We've already had some evidence that their electronic components which can be used in weapons, have been supplied to Russia. And so it's a little incongruous if the Chinese, on the one hand, say, here's a peace plan and we can act as a mediator, and then they're actually supplying weapons to the Russians. But I think if our people say that they have evidence of this, we have to take this seriously.
I do wonder, and forgive me, I'm trying to think whether it was a Bloomberg column that I read, but this whole idea that, where the U.S. has maybe failed, and maybe other countries, in that we've spread capitalism, but we didn't spread democracy. And I wonder...
Our guest said that earlier this week.
Was it a guest?
Yeah.
Was it one of our guests? Was it Ed Price?
It was Ed. Yeah.
It was Ed Price. Brilliant. And so I wonder how much you think about that, with people saying, well, the U.S. is at fault. Is there some truth to that, in that, whether it's China, whether it's other parts of the world, spread of capitalism, but not democracy?
Well, it's easier to spread capitalism than it is democracy. I mean, people like capitalism. They can make money from it. It's a good system. But it's very hard to influence another country's political system, and particularly a country like Russia or China. But let's take Russia, which has a century-old tradition of autocratic rule and very little tradition of ever having had democratic rule. The U.S. certainly tried, and other democratic countries tried in the 1990s when Boris Yeltsin was president, to encourage the spread of democracy there. But we have to understand the limits of our own influence, particularly in a country where the leadership and many of the people are not used to living in a democracy, and particularly in Russia, where they associate the attempts to spread democracy in the 1990s with a very difficult economic situation that they lived in, including a crash in 1998 where most people lost their savings. So I think you can't blame the United States for this. It's not within our power to impose a form of political governance on another country.
Having said that, then, do the allies, the Western allies, have no other choice but to support Ukraine in this?
Well, I mean, at the moment, yes, if we don't want Russia to take over Ukraine and then threaten other countries, because Putin's not going to stop there. I mean, he's made it clear that Russia wants to, quote-unquote, take back traditional lands that belong to Russia, and they've even mentioned Poland when they've talked about this. So this really is the only choice for the West, is to support Ukraine, to give it the wherewithal to push back. The Ukrainian army has done extremely well, much better than anyone thought it would, including Vladimir Putin, in this last year. Because if we don't supply Ukraine, it'll be very hard for them to resist what the Russians are doing, and then you will just have a more aggressive Russia in Europe.
Angela, can you talk a bit about Russia's strategy when it comes to those historic holding areas that you were talking about, specifically related to how they're targeting, museums in Ukraine and cultural historic centers?
So they're really trying to erase any independent Ukrainian history. In 2021, Putin published a 5,000-word essay where he claimed that there were no such things as Ukrainians, that Ukrainians don't have the right to a separate state, that Ukraine isn't a separate nationality, that they're, brothers and sisters with Russia. And so they have been trying to eliminate some of, Ukraine's culture. It's terrible what they've done there to the museums, to the libraries, to these vestiges or evidence of Ukrainian culture, because of his claim that Ukraine belongs to Russia and that Ukraine isn't even a country. That's what he said to President George W. Bush in 2008. He said to him, you have to understand, George, that Ukraine isn't even a country. Part of it used to be in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and most of it, he said, was in the Russian Empire. So that's what his view is.
Hey, Angela, what do you make of China's involvement at this point in talking about brokering a peace? They officially put out a plan, or a paper, if you will, in terms of some kind of peace accord. How does that kind of complicate the situation?
Well, I've read the so-called peace plan. It's rather general, I would say, and it really repeats talking points that they've had before. I don't know how much of an impact this will have, because none of the NATO countries have already said that this isn't a serious peace plan. The U.S. has said that, other allies, European Union has said that. I'm sure that some of the countries in the global south who haven't condemned Russia and haven't sanctioned it, they will say, look at the Chinese They're trying to put forward a peace plan and we should negotiate seriously. But it's very hard to have a credible peace plan if China is really supporting Russia. It's supporting all the Russian narrative about the war. As I said, it's supporting to some extent Russia with components for weapons. It's supplying technology to Russia, which Russia can't get now from the West because of the Western sanctions. So it's not a neutral party in this war.
Because Janet Yellen has certainly warned of some of the consequences if China ultimately provides help to Russia specifically. We're going to come back. We've got to do some news, and we're going to come back because I want to continue this conversation, and I want to get into more of, Vladimir Putin so well and understand kind of what makes him tick, and I want to get into that. We're going to continue with Angela Stint. She is senior fellow at Brookings. She's written a book called Putin's World, Russia Against the West and with the Rest, and we're going to get back to our conversation on this day where, hard to believe, but we are, yes indeed, marking 1 year since that Russian invasion of Ukraine. All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Radio. Let's head back to D.C. Nancy Lyons with World and National News. Hey, Nancy.
Thanks, Carol. Well, the United Nations Security Council marked the anniversary of the Ukraine war with renewed support for Ukraine. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has more from Washington.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged rejection of any calls for a ceasefire or a useless peace plan that ignored basic principles.
No seizing land by force. No erasing another country's borders. No targeting civilians in war. No wars of aggression. For peace to be durable, it must ensure that Russia can't simply rest, rearm, and relaunch the war in a few months or a few years.
Blinken described Russia's war crimes and atrocities that require prosecution, and he added that in this war there is an aggressor and there is a victim. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
European tanks are beginning to arrive in Ukraine ahead of Russia's spring offensive, but Ukraine is still pushing for fighter jets. Defense advisor Yuri Sachs says it normally takes a year to train on advanced fighters, but Ukraine's pilots are ready.
We are in a situation where first we already have pilots who have combat battlefield experience, and our pilots are ready to be